Twelfth Night tells the story of Viola and Sebastian, twins who arrive separated in Illyria following a shipwreck, with both assuming the other is dead. The majority of the early action focuses on Viola, who decides to disguise herself as a man in order to facilitate her becoming a member of Duke Orsino's household. Duke Orsino, meanwhile, is obsessed with the Countess Olivia and sends Viola, now a pert young man called Cesario, off to woo this lady on his behalf. Olivia, meanwhile, promptly falls in love with Cesario, and the plot later thickens when acquaintances of both Viola and Sebastian come into contact with each other. So, what is the effect of Viola's disguise upon the key events and ideas behind Twelfth Night? Well, stay tuned, you're watching Schofield on Shakespeare. Viola's idea for a disguise initially stems from prudence. She has arrived as a shipwreck in an unknown land and knows no one. In conversation with her captain, who in a typically convenient Shakespearean coincidence was bred and born not 3 hours travel from this very place, and so knows exactly who's who and what's what, she hears about the virtuous maid Countess Olivia. She cries out loud, "Oh, that I served that lady, and might not be delivered to the world, till I'd made mine own occasion mellow what my estate is." These words imply a cautious, wait-and-see attitude from Viola. She wants to lie low, find out what kind of a place she has landed in before revealing her identity. This caution may or may not stem from an appreciation of the potential dangers for a single woman alone in foreign territory, but unlike her counterpart Rosalind in As You Like It, who worries explicitly about the danger of being a maid in a distant land and hints at the possibility of a devastating sexual attack, these fears are not verbalised. As a result, the initial impression we have of Viola is that she is a more strategically astute and controlled character than her As You Like It counterpart, although as the latter play goes on, Rosalind admittedly comes into her own. Whereas Rosalind passively frets about her chastity following Duke Frederick's devastating decision to kick her out of the home she has never left, Viola affirmatively takes a decision to disguise herself, to give herself more control over her short and mid-term future. Viola hears that the Countess Olivia is admitting no newcomers to her inner sanctum, and only then does she come to the decision to disguise herself as a man. There are only 2 people mentioned by the captain who might be able to support new additions to their coteries, and having eliminated one, Viola quite naturally decides to turn to the other. The fact that this person is a man, and so will only have male confidants and gentlemen attendants, forces Viola's hand, and so she begs the ever-obliging captain, "Conceal me what I am, and be my aid for such disguise as haply shall become the form of my intent. I'll serve this duke. Thou shalt present me as a eunuch to him." And so the male dimension to the disguise is initially a mere side issue and of little relevance. The key point is that Viola, serving someone wealthy and of local significance, will enable her to bide her time before determining what steps to take to secure a safe and ideally prosperous future. Nonetheless, it is clear that the choice of a male disguise, although it is deemed initially fairly insignificant, produces unexpected advantages. In Act 1, Scene 4, Valentine reveals just how successful Viola's adopted persona as Cesario has been. In lines that also allow Shakespeare to artificially accelerate the movement of time, he says, "If the Duke continue these favours towards you, Cesario, you are like to be much advanced. He have known you but 3 days, and already you are no stranger." Duke Orsino enters a few lines later, and his first instruction is to order everyone apart from Viola to stand you a while aloof, to stand away from them so he can speak personally and intimately to his new attendants. The extent to which he has become entranced by Cesario is highlighted when he continues the previous line with these words: Cesario, thou knowest no less but all. I have enclassed to thee the book, even of my secret soul. Orsino's metaphor, the book even of my secret soul, suggests that he has felt so at ease with Cesario, he has rapidly narrated his own life story, including sections which he has never told anyone before. However, further analysis of this imagery hints at Orsino's lack of emotional depth. He may believe he is hopelessly in love with Olivia, but his self-indulgent whimsies and rapid shift to marry Viola at the end of the play indicate that these feelings may well be the fictionalized products of a romantic imagination rather than representative of reality. Viola, of course, is not to know this. Her disguise, which initially she hoped would give her a degree of control over her potentially perilous position, has in fact left her in an awkward state of limbo in one of the key areas of an Elizabethan woman's life, love and relationships. Whilst Orsino has been pouring out his heart about his love for Olivia, Viola has herself been falling in love with him, resulting in her confiding at the end of Act 1, Scene 4, "I'll do my best to woo your lady," and then adding in a confidential aside to the audience, "Yet a barful strife, whoe'er I woo, myself would be his wife." The rhyming couplet highlights the conflicting position Viola is in due to her incredibly successful adoption of a male identity. She is in strife, in violent or angry disagreement with herself, because she has to attempt to woo another woman on Orsino's behalf, knowing that this can only be detrimental to her own hopes to be his wife. For Viola's successful disguise has effectively trapped her. Although on the one hand it gives her free, unfettered access to the man she loves and allows an unprecedented insight into his heart, it also leaves her frustrated that her altered appearance as a young man means that she is unable to be considered a potential love interest herself. As the play goes on and Viola's disguise continues to deny her even the limited opportunities granted to an Elizabethan woman to plead her case in love, think of Helena's frustrated thrusts to Demetrius in A Midsummer Night's Dream. There is a sense that her disguised imposed entrapment and her desperate feelings of unrequited love could even result in her death. In Conversation in Act 2, Scene 4, she describes a daughter of her father, whom the audience knows refers to herself, and whom Orsino quite naturally assumes to be her sister. She explains how the father's daughter never told her love, but let concealment, like a worm in the buds, feed on her damask cheek. When Orsino asks whether this sister died of her love, Viola's response is enigmatic. "I am all the daughters of my father's house, and all the brothers too, and yet I know not," before rapidly changing the subject. Viola's words highlight the desperate passivity of an Elizabethan woman in love. Concealment is made the subject of the main clause, and this abstract noun is able to eat away at the woman's previously healthy pink damask cheek, resulting in painfully slow decay and decomposition. When questioned whether this decomposition and hidden heartache led to death, Viola first gives someone more intuitive and less self-obsessed than Orsino the opportunity to realise that she is referring to herself. She is all the daughters of my father's house and all the brothers too, and then claims she doesn't know whether this poor soul died. At this stage in the play, with Orsino's love for Olivia apparently as strong as ever, although to be fair, Olivia's disdain and disinterest remain equally robust, there are tragic undertones. It is clear that disguise has unwittingly made Viola deeply unhappy, and with no sign of either how she can shrewdly reveal her true identity or how she can wrench Orsino away from his Olivia obsession, death cannot be discounted as a medium-term future possibility. As the previous section implies, Viola's disguise, as well as her instinct to remain as honest as possible within these confines, results in greater ambiguity of language and a growing intimacy with the audience through dramatic irony. As well as all but telling Orsino that she is in love with him in Act 2, Scene 4, in Act 1, Scene 4, she finds herself in the opposite position of conversing with someone who is in love with her. For it is not just Orsino who finds something bewitching about the feminine man in which all is semblative a woman's parts. Olivia is quickly spellbound by both Cesario's youthful appearance and his pert, bold speeches on Orsino's behalf. Insisting that this new, highly attractive acquaintance must be a gentleman, she cries in a joyous soliloquy, "I'll be sworn thou art. Thy tongue, thy face, thy limbs, actions and spirits do give thee fivefold blazon." Olivia's use of conjuries shows her enthusiasm for all aspects of Cesario, his physical appearance, the way he moves, his speech, his inner drive. In fact, her zest is such that she feels such qualities combined represent a blazon, a glorious coat of arms. These words reveal an instinctive belief that such a strong personality and such good looks must be proof of fine breeding and exemplify the curious power Viola has disguised as Cesario over both men and women. Faced with Olivia's increasingly amorous onslaught, Viola once again resorts to ambiguous language, which highlights her desire to remain as truthful as her disguise permits, without self-destructively unravelling her genuine identity. Just as she refers to all the daughters of my father's house in Act 2, Scene 4, in Act 3, Scene 1, she responds to Olivia's Helena-esque self-humiliatingly admission of love by saying, "By innocence I swear, and by my youth I have one heart, one bosom and one truth, and that no woman has, nor never none shall mistress be of it, save I alone." Unlike Rosalind in As You Like It, who successfully manipulates Phoebe into marrying the dim-witted Silvius by proposing a scenario that seems impossible at the time, here in Twelfth Night, Viola chooses words that are true, but are likely to be misinterpreted by all but the audience. In a society in which gleeful homosexual acts took place, but had no official or legal recognition, if Cesario is indeed the person he projects himself to be, in other words a man, his words can only be interpreted as a vow of lifelong, vigilant virginity and chastity, ironically similar to Olivia's own reported vows at the beginning of the play. Olivia quickly abandoned her own extreme stance to unveil and request tongue-in-cheek praise for her beauty during her first meeting with Cesario in Act 1, Scene 5, and so in this later scene, she is not put off by Viola's more ambiguous vow. Meanwhile, the audience respect Viola's painstaking juggling of language in order to sail as close to the truth as the continuing maintenance of her disguise allows. There is no question that Viola's disguise switches rapidly from a means of retaining a degree of control over her destiny to provoking complex situations and scenarios that she could never have envisaged, namely herself falling in love with a man whilst rather unfortunately appearing to be a man herself, and a woman falling in love with her. In Act 2, Scene 2, Viola explicitly reflects on the nature of disguise, and her words indicate a newfound belief that disguise can develop an alarming autonomy of its own. Following a chain of events involving a ring which categorically revealed to Viola and the audience, but not Malvolio, that Olivia is in love with her, she muses miserably. "Disguise, I see thou art a weak wickedness, wherein the pregnant enemy does much. How easy it is for the proper false in women's waxen hearts to set their forms." The direct address to disguise shows an unequivocal belief that her adoption of an albeit temporary male identity is the cause of her current, deeply unhappy impasse, whilst the references to wickedness and the pregnant enemy, signifying a hidden, devious devil, show how destructive she believes deliberately disguising yourself can be. She believes women have waxen hearts, can easily be swayed due to their more emotional natures, and so it is evil to make a fellow woman suffer by dressing herself up as a handsome, a proper man, yet to be false inside due to the use of such a disguise. These words suggest Viola's now strongly held belief that initially innocuous disguises can have unexpected, unhealthy, evil consequences. Another consequence of her disguise that Viola could not have envisaged back in Act 1, Scene 2, largely due to an assumption of his death, is that she now looks incredibly similar to her twin brother Sebastian, and so the pair can potentially be mistaken for each other. This results in the net of intrigue widening beyond those who have instigated or would like to instigate intimate relationships with this fictional persona. Antonio, for example, has formed an inexplicably devoted bond with an initially determined to be alone Sebastian, so much so that in Act 3, Scene 3, he begged his new friend to make off with his wallet in case, haply, your eyes shall light upon some toy you have desire to purchase. In the subsequent scene, he needs some of this money after being arrested by officers. Historically, in a sea fight against the Count his galleys, I did some service. He did a lot of damage to Duke Orsino's warships, and is understandably hurt when the person he presumes is Sebastian, but is actually Viola, disguised as Cesario, not only says he never had his purse in the first place, but also that he's never met him before in his life. Before being led away by the officers, Antonio's words reveal that he feels terribly betrayed. But oh, how vile an idol proves this god. Thou hast, Sebastian, done good features shame. In nature there's no blemish but the mind's. None can be called deformed but the unkind. Virtue is beauty, but the beauty is evil. Our empty trunks, oh, flourish by the devil. These words reinforce Viola's previous declaration that disguise and the consequence of disguise can be wickedness. Sebastian's apparent betrayal leads Antonio to reassess and restate his views on those who have a beautiful exterior which hides inner evil. His conclusion is that such people are metaphorically trunks, ornate chests used in Elizabethan times as furniture, which have been repeatedly scrawled on and decorated by the devil himself. These words erroneously condemn Viola as devil-tainted and wicked, and Antonio is likely to spend time in his prison cells wondering what on earth he has done to deserve to be shunned so publicly by a person to whom he has only shown love and devotion. Sir Toby is another who mistakes one of the twins for the other. And remember that this would not have happened if Viola had maintained a female identity due to obvious differences in clothing and hair. But unlike Antonio, who is consideration personified, it is rather enjoyable to see him get his comeuppance when fighting someone who he thinks is the cowardly Cesario, but is in fact Sebastian. Sir Andrew sums up their collective shock at his fighting prowess in Act 5, Scene 1. We took him for a coward, but he's the very devil incarnate. And it is clear this error of mistaken identity has one, and possibly two, serious consequences. Firstly, both knights are injured in a way they never would have been if their opponent had been genuinely Viola. But secondly, one can argue that Sir Toby's savage beating at the hands of Sebastian results in a termination of his very friendship with his loyal drinking companion and funds provider, Sir Andrew. Bleeding and in pain as he enters the stage in Act 5, Scene 1, Sir Toby is unable to hide his frustration following his well-meaning but useless companion's offer to help him, and cries out, "Will you help? An asshead and a coxcomb and a knave, a thin-faced knave, a gull!" Like Malvolio's final appearance, these lines cast a dim shadow over the general rejoicing and lovemaking of the last scene of the play. In the majority of productions, the relentless congeries, the savage repetition of knave, meaning a scoundrel, shock and hurt Sir Andrew to the core, leaving him to slink off stage, an ashen, broken man, finally realising that for all of this time he has been used by a more intelligent, utterly ruthless man. Would Sir Toby have publicly abused his companion in the same way if he had actually fought Viola as Cesario rather than Sebastian, and therefore not sustained any injuries whatsoever? But the other cases of mistaken identity have far happier outcomes. Olivia hastily marries a stranger, Sebastian, but in the largely vibrant and upbeat mood of Twelfth Night. That's no problem. If she needs reassuring, and I'm not sure that she does, this reassurance comes following Sebastian's glib summing up of their situation. "So comes it, lady, you have been mistook, but nature to her bias drew in that you would have been contracted to a maid, nor are you therein by my life deceived, you are betrothed both to a maid and man." So, according to Sebastian, nature, with her preference for the male-female alliance that can result in procreation, played a part in Olivia unwittingly marrying someone she thought was Cesario, but was actually her twin brother. Sebastian also plays on maid, meaning both young woman and unmarried virgin, to suggest his own virginity, something traditionally deemed exceedingly important for a woman to possess on her wedding day. in some ways brings him closer to the female reality that has been uncovered by the revelation that Cesario is in fact Viola. It is not only Olivia who is quick to adapt to unexpected circumstances following the removal of Viola's disguise. Orsino, previously so devoted to the idea that he is desperately in love with Olivia, makes an astonishing U-turn. Not keen to miss out on the festivities, he proclaims, "I shall have share in this most happy rack. Boy, thou hast said to me 1,000 times, thou should never love woman like to me," and promptly decides to marry her. Whether it is the overriding mood of spontaneity, both on stage and implied in the festival from which the play takes its title, or whether this revelation produces a light bulb moment in Orsino that actually he got on brilliantly with Viola's Cesario, and so may work even better with the original genuine version. It is clear that the ultimate happy consequence of Viola's disguise is that in spite of earlier visions of pining, smiling at grief and possible death, it has facilitated her path towards a wealthy and important husband. This has been a Schofield on Shakespeare production, exploring the effects of Viola's disguise in Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. Thanks for watching.